Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And my name is Ben Isaacov, and I'm very excited to host this webinar for you. Today, we are going to have two wonderful panelists that are going to speak about the value of this, and they will share their experience on how to prepare for it and how to survive this very critical stage of any startup. But before we jump and dive into the subject, I would like to cover a couple of things in here. First of all, let's speak about some housekeeping rules. We would like you to introduce yourself in the chat. So we want to know who you are, where are you coming from, what you want to learn from this webinar. Okay, please use Q&A for your questions. We are going to monitor the Q&A, and we will load these questions as we go, or maybe we will answer them at the end. But all and every question will be answered at this session today. And also, this webinar is going to be recorded. So if you missed something, or you got distracted, or you just want to listen to it again, we will send a follow-up email with the link for the recording, so you can listen to it. And please feel free to share with your network. We do it for you and for your benefit, so it will be greatly appreciated if you spread the word. So before we continue in here, I would like to introduce the team at Stu Clark Center for Entrepreneurship, because without that team, nothing would work, and we won't be able to serve the students the way that we are. And let me start with Deborah, our executive director. She is an amazing person that overseeing the operations on the top level and helping each one of us on the tactical level. And she is guiding us and helping us interacting with the rest of the university and the business ecosystem here in Winnipeg. Amy, our event manager, she is the wizard behind our events, and without her help, nothing would work as smooth, as fabulous as possible. So it is a lot of work, and she's doing a great job coordinating our events. And please visit them; you will witness it yourself. Lindsay, she's our marketing guru, and it's anything like we need to communicate to the world out of our walls. She will be our go-to person, and she does a magnificent job doing that and promoting us. I will speak about myself as a startup coach a little bit later. And I want to mention Melinda, our office administrator. As you understand, any operations will have tons of back-end processes that somebody needs to take care of. And we are all grateful for Melinda to taking care of all of these little steps that we would miss if it was not her. So why Stu Clark Center and what we do? Our purpose is quite simple. Our mission is to ignite entrepreneurial spirit within every University of Manitoba student, and in fact, with any student in Manitoba and across Canada. And we want to make sure that students will realize that entrepreneurship can be a viable career path for them, and all they need is just to give it a try. So I will show a short video right now that will do a better job introducing us that I am doing it. So please check it out. Give me a second. I will give me a second. I forgot that I need to share my sound. So, and here we go.
Let's talk about entrepreneurship. It's the light bulb moment from your first big idea. It's the decision to set out on a new path. It's the realization that entrepreneurship starts with a spark, and that spark starts here. At the Stu Clark Center, we're here to nurture your ideas and help spark your entrepreneurial spirit. How? How about competitive opportunities to free your inner entrepreneur? Advice from venture coaches who have walked the walk, or some of the best networking events you'll find on campus. You'll find it all right here. By focusing on education, awareness, community, coaching, and connection. We build strong relationships with our students and do everything we can to help them on their journey to self-starting. At the Stu Clark Center, we thrive when you thrive. No idea is too big or too small. The Stu Clark Center is your one-stop shop for everything you need to start your journey. So why not start today?
So as you
Let's
can
talk
see, we have lots of things going on. For the upcoming webinars, I would like to highlight the one that is going to happen on April the 3rd. We are bringing the one and the only David Segal to share his experience and expertise in launching a business. He is very good in the retail industry. He's a serial entrepreneur. We've touched a little bit on his history, and I can tell you that is amazing, and he will have so many interesting insights for you. So please make sure that you are registering for this upcoming webinar and join us for this event. And I wanted to touch on the next big thing that is going to happen with us, even though the applications are already closed and we have our teams, but we are very excited. We have amazing teams that are going to participate in the New Venture Championship that will take place from April 18 to 20. And what it is, it's a 3-day high energy competition focused on entrepreneurship and innovation. We have over $60,000 in cash prizes for the winning teams. We have participants from grad and undergrad teams, so we are covering all of the demographics here in university, and we have teams all across North America. So if I remember correctly, we have at least 7 or 8 different locations across North America participating, and it is going to be a blast. So semifinals are going to be open to the public, so please join us on the undergrad and graduate championship rounds, and experience the phase of how the teams are fighting for the first place. So a very important portion of what we do is our startup coach program, and I'm taking care of the program, and I'm responsible for that. It is a free resource for every student, and we help students to start the entrepreneurial journey. All you need to do is to book a one-on-one meeting with me using our Startup Tree platform, and we can pick you up from any stage in your entrepreneurial journey. If you have an idea, great. We will work with you on validating the idea and building a business plan and pushing it out to the next step in our business ecosystem. And if you don't have an idea, we will be able to help you to find something that will inspire you and will excite you, and then we will develop it into a business model that you will probably be able to do. So all you need to do is visit our website and go to the Startup Coach program link, and then you will create an account, connect with me, and book some time, automate using the calendar, and be ready to launch your product. So with all of this intro, I understand that it is a little longer. I would like to introduce you to our panel, and today we are going to meet Ellery Burton from Altera Innovation, and we are going to meet Jordan Hammond from Genion Comfort. And one thing is for sure, even though, and you will learn it very shortly, these two gentlemen are very different in their backgrounds, and they are very different in their experiences. There is one critical component that they share: being serial entrepreneur and being successful entrepreneur, which can help you to understand what kind of mindsets they possess that helps them out to go through the valley of death. And they will share some tips and tricks on how you can make this experience as less harmful as possible. So without further ado, I would like to invite our panel, and let's start the conversation. Hey, Larry. Hey, Jordan.
Hey, good afternoon. Good morning still, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's 15 minutes. Yeah, I like the precision. I like the precision. Okay, so how about we start with a short round of introductions? So just please tell us who you are, what your business is, and yeah, and what excites you, what inspires you.
Yeah, sure. I can go first. So, yeah, my name is Ellery Burton. I grew up in Manitoba. I grew up on a farm in Manitoba, actually, just north of Neepawa. I've spent most of my life in Manitoba, but I did do a 10-year stint in the Canadian Armed Forces, where I got my mechanical engineering degree and left the military in about 2013. Spent 10 years in industry working doing some engineering management, designing farm machinery and equipment. Another few years with a company called High Life in Manitoba, who some of you might be familiar with, working in supply chain and doing some technical buying for them. And then two years at a company called AgriHub, where we were building farms, designing building farms, selling equipment, and decided to go out on my own. Started a company called Altera Innovation. Kind of our vision is to solve some of the biggest problems out there, and typically develop products. Could be a software solution, but sometimes it's just a mechanical device. And our strategy involves kind of patenting the elements of those devices or systems that are unique, that solve that problem that in most cases hasn't been solved before. And so we've been doing that for 2 years. We have 3 patented systems that are in the market, and I just love it. I've always been someone who tinkers with things, love to solve problems, and that convergence between farming and technology is I guess those two are my passions. Trying to make our farms more efficient, and solving some of the big challenges, bridging the gaps between technology and agriculture. Those would be my passions. So.
Oh, that's cool. The high tech and low tech combined into one. That's awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. How about you, Jordan?
Yeah, first of all, thanks so much for having me, Ben. Born and raised in Manitoba, same as Ellery. Been an entrepreneur since I was 21, so I've started 2 businesses in my career. One crashed and burned very quickly. One has thankfully had some success. I've acquired 3 other businesses in my career so far, and I'm passionate about entrepreneurship, but balanced with being a success at home as well. I'm a husband, 4 young kids, so lots of juggling going on. But I firmly believe, and I experience in my own life, that you don't have to sacrifice family at the altar of business success and entrepreneurship. So that's what I'm most passionate about. Genuine Comfort is our business, my second startup that had some success. We've acquired some other competitors and kind of rolled up our little niche in the market. Approximately 20 employees to date, about 15 million in annual revenue. And we have a big growth plan, big vision ahead of us in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. One thing, like I know you out of this session, obviously. One thing that you two share is strategic thinking, right? Looking forward and planning the actions, which is very important. So, one question like that I would like to start the conversation with, first of all, right? When our and I call all of our students our clients, right? When our clients coming into us and they say, okay, well, we want to have a startup. Okay, we have this entrepreneurial idea. We want to be business people. We say, okay, well, fine, but before that, we need to put some foundational basis to it. Okay, so I would like to ask both of you, what would be the foundations that one must have in place when they start the business, and why these foundations are important in your opinion?
Yeah, I could take a crack at that first, I guess. So I think 2 different ways. I think a foundation personally for yourself, And then I think of the foundation in the actual business that you're starting. And I think by nature, we just have to be realistic about a foundation. It's never going to be complete. So I think that's the first thing just to be very aware of. Uh, there is countless stories. I mean, I'd say probably the 99% of people that have an idea never actually start something because they're trying to build a foundation in its entirety, and that's just not possible. What I will say uh, is a piece of a foundation that I should have got with my first startup that didn't succeed is a vetted idea that actually showed product market fit. So I think you get that based on feedback from actual potential future customers. And it's sometimes very hard to hear that feedback. And I know myself, when I was starting out, I was only 21 years old. I was very scared to hear that real feedback from people that could tell me my idea sucked and that it needed to be completely changed, or that it just wasn't going to work because of X, X, and X.
Mhm.
I didn't want to hear it, so I didn't pursue that kind of advice, and it was to my detriment. So I think that's a crucial part of a foundation of any idea that's going to get legs in the future. It needs to have vetted market feedback from people that are actually going to write the checks in the future for that product or service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. You know what? Like, you are absolutely right. I've seen it like in myself, obviously, like so many times. And it's very strong with engineering and science. Actually, people in this category tend to fall in love with the solution, and they forget about the problem that they are solving, which should be the opposite. What do you say, Larry? Being an engineer.
Yeah, I'm glad Jordan went first. I think he's got that business experience. So my thought went to the personal side as well. Like, I think it's a maturity, maybe it's a point of maturity, or being able to accept constructive criticism. Being an engineer, yeah, a lot of our business is built on intellectual property, ideas, solutions. So I think it's being, yeah, willing to ask the tough questions, like, what does your customer want, right? If you don't have a business without a customer can be could be an individual consumer, but it could be a licensing, play to a large multinational company. So defining your customer, asking the right questions, and being able to accept that. Sometimes it's tough. Like, I do have some ideas where I'm like, this is the greatest idea ever. And then you start having conversations with people that have experience, and they tell you it's a good idea, but you need to do all these things. And so it can be scary to ask those questions, because you're kind of creating more work for yourself, delaying your business, delaying your launch. But I think letting that percolate, like a kind of like a good cup of coffee, will give you a better business in the end. So I think that product market fit's a good way to say it. And I just always expand the conversation, because there's so many products or different ideas that it can look quite different depending on what your business or your startup is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. But you know what? Uh, Validation of the problem. I guess like any business, like down the road, it doesn't matter at what stage of the business you are. If you are not 100% on that, it will affect you, right? But it will affect you big time in the value of death, because it's a matter of if you are getting it so profitable or not at the end of the day. Anything else other that product market fit that you can think of that our students or our audience will want to focus or take into consideration?
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind for me on the personal side is to know yourself as well as you can before you pursue an entrepreneurial endeavor. I'm a big believer in some of the personality profiles and assessments that are out there. Not that it's a silver bullet for any problem, but it's just a great tool of self-awareness and to get to know yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really a advantage, to use some of these tools that are out there, the Colby, the DISC. There's a great one from Gino Wickman, actually, that's all set up to find out if you kind of have entrepreneurial tendencies or not. It's called Entrepreneurial Leap. That's a great tool to assess yourself. Not that it's going to tell you whether you are or you aren't, but it's going to help you know where your strengths and your weaknesses lie when you encounter the obstacles and the challenges, because they will come, right? And you kind of get to know what kind of entrepreneur you are, so that you can, kind of lean one way versus the other way, and just be aware of how you may respond in certain situations.
Okay, how about you, Ellery? Do you want to add?
Yeah, I really like that. I think knowing yourself, knowing your weaknesses, the disc profile is what I'm familiar with, and it gives you a sense of where your blind spots might be. And so I think you need, in my case, it might be my wife who I bounce ideas off of, because I know what some of my weaknesses are, and she's quite the opposite of me, so she's able to provide that perspective. So you're never a one person show. It doesn't exist when they say a self-built man or woman or whatever. It's just a term that people use. I think you always need, people to bounce ideas off of and cover your blind spots. I think the other thing that if we go back to like the market validation, what I've learned through that process, it was scary at first, but kind of facing your fears in that regard is a way to say it. And the market validation, when you ask, instead of asking 5 questions, you ask 1,000 questions to 1,000 different customers. What that gives you down the road is confidence, because you've heard from that customer. They've told you what the market needs. They've probably shared more than you ever knew. And so as you learn and modify your product and adapt it and polish it and pivot potentially, as you're going through that, you get to the valley and you kind of approach it. You had all those conversations. You know what the weaknesses are, and you know what you're trying to accomplish. So even if you get to a place where you're running low on cash or whatever, you can have a frank conversation with an investor. Say, I know what we need to do to get to the market, and it ends up being your point of confidence. It ends up giving you that confidence and that kind of fuel that you need to get through some of those tougher situations. So yeah, facing your fears and making sure that you understand the market, the customer, the specific need that you're bringing value to.
Oh, that's an interesting turn in here on the conversation. Like when Jordan, when you spoke about the personal triads, all of the preps, like all of the communities that are preparing for disasters, they will buy stuff, they will build bunkers, but most of them are forgetting that the most valuable tool for survival is their own body, right? And they just don't work on it. They don't work on their own skills, fitness, and stuff like that. So that is an interesting point that you brought up, both of you actually. Like, you need to know yourself. So we are looking at it, and me personally, I agree with it that entrepreneurship is an acquired skill. Like, it's not something that you've born with it and that's it, right? And some people are, some people aren't, because it can take so many different ways. And when we are speaking about personal triads, so which one of the personal triads you would like to identify before you start the business, gauge it, how strong or weak is it, and work on it so it will help you through the valley of death? And I'm not speaking only about, resilience, right? Like, it's obvious one. So I will make it a little bit harder for you. Like, what are other personal triads that one needs to work on?
Yeah, I mean, the way that I would answer that is kind of what I said before. The obstacles and the challenges will come. We know that. By definition, when you're starting something new, you will fail hundreds and thousands of times along the way. So it's being really comfortable with that and knowing that you've already bounced back from the smaller failures that you've had in your life, and developing that confidence that you will bounce back and you will face the wall and figure out a way to get over it, through it, or around it, and not, curl up in the fetal position. So the way that I think you can prepare for that, the best way possible, is by putting yourself in those situations. And certainly not every founder or entrepreneur has a sales background, but lots of them do. And I think one of the reasons why is that salespeople encounter a lot of failure right? The phone getting hung up on them, the door getting slammed in their face every day. And so they learn very quickly that failure is just an event that leads to success. And that has to be, it has that lesson has to get ingrained into you in order to be a successful entrepreneur.
Mhm.
If you are scared of failure, if you don't see failing fast and cheap as the way to get to success, if that's not something that you believe is true, you will really struggle because the door will get slammed, the phone will get hung up on you. So I would encourage, people in this webinar and other people listening to it after, put yourself in those situations right now that you can fail fast and cheap, and build that muscle, build that skill of learning how to do that, because that is your path. And there's no way around it as an entrepreneur business owner. That is the path. And you can figure out how to mitigate it and do it better, faster, or cheaper, but you will fail countless times.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Like fail fast, fail cheap. Almost like a motto we can print and put it in our office in here, right? How about you, Hillary?
Yeah, it's there's all these slogans out there. It's kind of funny, and I used to think, oh, it's kind of an easy way to say it, and then it ends up boiling down to that. But I guess I can draw on a little bit of experience for myself. I have a different background than a lot of people, but I can try to draw some parallels. So I was in the military right out of high school. Went to Royal Military College, which was a extremely challenging academic institution, leadership institution. Like they pushed us in every possible way with academics and fitness and all these different things. And you kind of know it at the time, but you realize later, people sometimes will ask me like, how do you do this? How do you do that? How do you kind of get through these situations? Well, we would be pushed and tested on, let's say, for example, somebody at the University of Manitoba could decide to do a marathon, or decide to do a mud run, or some kind of a challenge, and you get a sense of accomplishment even when you finish those types of things. So what I do now is I look at, because I've gone through a lot of adversity, I'm pretty comfortable with it. But when I sense fear in myself, I try to take note of it, because what are you afraid of? I think it ties into Jordan's point. Like if you're afraid of failing, for example, then you probably need to get yourself out there more because you're not trying enough things. If you're afraid of a marathon, then go run a marathon. If you're afraid of, speaking in public, join a Toastmasters group. You have to be willing to acknowledge your fears. And I think there's a real, I've learned a lot from doing that. And so once you get into it, it doesn't have to be business related even, but once you get into a parallel situation in business, you have those experiences to draw on to say, oh, I remember I was that mile 20 in that marathon and I felt like dying. Well, you're at mile 20 in your business venture, and you got 5 miles to get to the finish line where you might find a lot of success. And if you quit, then you won't get there. So you're able to pull in these different experiences. For us, it ended up being combat. I went to Afghanistan in 2011, and all of those experiences, they prepare you for that, that ultimate adversity. And you come through it, and then you can look back and say you did that. So I think as a young person, you don't have those experiences necessarily. And a lot of people don't have combat experience, but you can put yourself into those situations. And I always look at fear. What am I afraid of? And then I actually go after that to try to build that part of my character out.
Oh, that's a great insight. You know what? Like before we jump into the hard cash conversation kind of thing, right? I like what you two are saying. Like about the fear. It's almost like using. I like the idea of using the procrastination as your tool for managing your self-development, because the thing that you're afraid of or you are procrastinating the most has the most potential for a growth for you, right? And that's pretty much exactly what you are saying. So, so last question before we jump into more of the strategies and cash and everything. Jordan, you've mentioned balance, right? Business, generally speaking, is not 9 to 5, right? And it is never the case. But especially when you are in a startup, you are working like 10, 14, 7, right? and it is never ending. How do you keep the balance of your personal life, at least on some level of sanity, like, at some level, so it will not sag completely and go out of control?
In a startup, you don't. You simply don't. I mean, I don't think you can. That's the nature of a startup. So when I talk about a holistic life, there's seasonality to that. There's seasons where I've put my head down and I've grinded hard, and then there's a season where, I'm married with 4 kids, and I work 25, 30 hours a week on purpose, intentionally. So I think the goal is to not stay in that place where you're running at an 80-hour-a-week clip for an extended period that has no end in sight. I mean, we all know that leads to a different kind of, valley of death. You're burned out, you're toast, you're done. There's nothing good that comes from that. So there has to be a plan. There has to be, this is kind of getting down the road of where a startup ends up, but there has to be a plan to delegate, to hire, to manage and lead as your idea gets traction. But just being realistic, when you're getting an idea off the ground and you're trying to get product market fit, you're all in. Like, that's all you're thinking about, 80, 100 hours a week. So don't fight it. I just think don't stay there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. So I have a bit of a different situation. I'm married, no kids. So I find myself with a lot more time than somebody with a family does. Maybe more like a younger person. And I'm able to push myself. I challenge myself with that, but always save time for your family. And I just think of the word recharge, like whatever it is that recharges an individual. People need to, if you don't know that about yourself, you need to find that out. It could be reading, it could be a walk with your dog. For me, it's fitness. I love fitness. I actually serve on the volunteer fire department in Steinbach, which people are like, how do you eat up all your time? How do you do it? I love it. Like, pager goes off at 2 a.m, and I get to go and run to do that. So whatever it is that energizes you in a positive recharging way, instead of, kind of the same as your business, I think that's what I always try to balance with. And I think if you have a family, I mean, I don't have kids, but I imagine that's one of the best sources of just recharging and thinking about something else other than your business. And sometimes when I do that with my wife, I get the best ideas, and it's like my problem solved itself in without any
Mm-hmm.
effort. So I think there's something in our brains that I think is very natural when you rest or when you recharge. So I think it's important to know what that is for you, and you just have to make time for it. Otherwise, to Jordan's point, you just burn out. You won't be successful. It's part of your success strategy. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, no, that's a good advice. Thank you for that. So we've touched on us personally as, like, the main driving. When we look on the technical side of it, like, so we speak a little bit about the product market fit, right? So, which is critical. Without it, you cannot really go to the market without putting yourself into the failure. But can you share some strategies and tips on managing the cash flow when you just started? Or maybe we can speak about what you need to do, like, on the technical side before that. So, like, now you have a great validated idea, you are excited to get started, like, you just pull the trigger on it, and then you dive right in. Stepping back and say, okay, just a second, you need to do A, B, and C. What would be the A, B, and C?
Yeah, well, if we're talking about cash and making sure that, the plane doesn't dip into the trees, I can speak to that. So that is the number one reason businesses fail, startups fail, right? Is they run out of cash. So managing your cash is crucial, and probably without diving in too deep into the weeds, the best advice I can get from my experience is your sophistication with how you manage your cash should be very different as you scale. So, I kind of think of it like when you are just trying to get product market fit and you got some sales coming in the door, very minimal, you should have an outsourced bookkeeper from the beginning. Like as soon as there's revenue coming in the door, right? The outsourced bookkeepers everywhere. Find a good one, interview them. You pay them by the hour because you don't want to have to wonder what's going on with your cash. You need to get a monthly report, know where things are at, basic cash flow statement. This went out to this what came in, this is what you're left with. Just your sleep at night factor is well worth the few $100 you're going to spend on a bookkeeper. And then your cash flow statement should match the level that your business is at, which is ground floor, right? As you grow, as you realize the idea has legs, I don't know what level of sales you're at because every industry is different, but then you should really consider going to like a fractional CFO level. And this is something I wish I would have done earlier on. It's not incredibly expensive. You get a fractional CFO for maybe $1,000 or $2,000 a month, depending on the size of your business. And that can kind of be the next level where they manage your cash a little bit deeper, do some analysis, do some projections. So there's different levels as you scale, right? Don't be reading books where it's a $10 million business that's talking about all these cash management strategies. You don't need that until you get there. And then my other kind of just umbrella piece of experiential advice I have with that is that even though you hire these people, you still need to have oversight into the cash, right? You don't need to understand every nook and cranny of it, but you need to review the monthly statement with them, and you need to understand it, and you need to ask the stupid questions, even if you don't understand it. Believe me, I've asked plenty of stupid questions to my CFO, and I'm happy that I do it because I don't understand finances like I do the operations of the revenue side. So it helps me learn. And then it lets everybody in your world know that you're still on top of the cash. It's your responsibility at the end of the day. They know you're going to ask questions, so therefore they're prepared with answers. And I trust people. I trust people with managing the cash and handling it, but you never want to put yourself in a situation where it gives people the opportunity to do something that is ethically unsound with your cash. Not that they would, but you don't want to present that opportunity to them. So the way you don't do that is by showing them that you're on top of it, and you're interested, and you're asking the right questions.
Okay. Thank you for that one. How about you, Ellery?
Yeah, good insights from Jordan. His business is matured matured through the various stages beyond ours. When I first thought of it, I just thought of the basics, which you touched on. So, budgeting, I think if you have, $5,000, you're gonna have a very different budget than you would if you have, $15 million of revenue. So from that budget, budgets can be scary. People think, I don't know why people are scared of budgets, but it's how much money do you have and what do you plan to do with it? It's very simple. So I have a budget. It might be 15 line items for the year. It's very, very simple. It just gives me a bit of here's what I have, here's what I can potentially do with it. And then you scale from there. If you have $50,000, you might have bigger plans, or if you have 15 million, you're gonna have different plans, but the same basics are there. So what do you have? And then I agree with Jordan, like you have to have in-depth knowledge. So I have a bookkeeper, just as an example. They keep track of all the details for me because I just don't like doing it actually. But I write all the checks. I send every single e-transfer. I deal with every single invoice. That's where I'm at in my business. And I don't like doing it, but I know I need to do it. I need to have that control at this point. So whatever stage you're at, I think there's different, bringing in fractional CFOs and these things, I think is really good advice. It just depends on where you're at.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for both of you. That's a great advice, which leads into another question, right? Outsourcing versus do it all yourself, right? Everyone knows, especially as the startups and small business, you are wearing, hundreds of different hats, and you don't have cash to hire this one. You don't have cash to hire that one, right? You try to do all in house, right? So you already touched on the finances. So we are looking on the financial side. What do you think the next big thing that you need to try and outsource and take this hat off your head?
For me, it's the biggest area of weakness that I have. That's what I outsourced first was marketing. Whatever takes the most time for you and contributes the least to your business, probably maybe the easiest way to say it. For me, that was marketing. And you just get creative. I have friends that have the marketing skills, so I hire them, for cash on the side or whatever that looks like, and you start covering off your weaknesses and do what you do best, because it brings the most value, and outsource what you're weakest at potentially, or takes you the most. I think of it takes me the most time, because time is, probably your biggest resource, second to money maybe. So marketing was the first thing I called in, phoned a friend for marketing help. So
Yes, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, I would echo some of that as well. I think of it as there needs to be a systematic, I use an operating system called the EOS model, Entrepreneur's Operating System, and they use delegate and elevate is the term they use for this. So you're delegating one role to elevate to the next role. And it comes down to what Ellery's talking about, your strengths and weaknesses. So kind of what's your unique ability? What do you do really well, right? You never want to delegate that. You want to delegate first those very systematic tasks that are low paid, right? So the administration and the bookkeeping is usually the first thing for startups. As you grow, it's really good to have a future org chart in mind. And this isn't when you're getting product market fit initially, but once you have that product market fit, have that future org chart in mind of what's the organization going to look like in 3 years, and what seats are you going to need in it. And every really successful organization, they have 3 rock stars in the organization. One's leading the getting customers, right? The revenue function. One is fulfilling those customers, right? Providing the service or product that's needed, the operations person, and then the finance person, keeping them both in check. And so think about, if you want to grow this thing like beyond yourself, you're going to need those 3 roles in the future on a leadership team. And initially, you or your partners, you guys are going to be in those 3 roles, but there needs to be a plan in the future to keep on elevating and delegating until you're out of those, and then you're truly, just a CEO or COO as an owner. And that's when you're in a more mature space as a business. But certainly initially, the lowest paid, kind of most systematic tasks, I would just keep on getting rid of those and outsourcing them as you go.
I see. Yes, thank you so much. I will probably use another cliche in here that everyone is using, and not many fully understand the difference between the running and managing the business, right? When you manage the tasks. And I love what you two saying, that in a sense, like when you do something that you are suck in it, you don't do something that you are really good in it, right? And that is affecting your business right away. So that is amazing, actually. That's so many interesting insights. What would be one thing that probably the most overlooked in that initial stage of the business that people need to be aware of? So we spoke about looking at yourself and your capacity. So we need to check this one out. Budgeting and making sure that you know where the money goes and when it will come, and in and out. But what else?
The one that stands out to me, because I screwed up on this, is continuing to refine your competitive advantage after you get traction early. So it's I think it's really easy to overlook that, because you're so busy building an organization and a business after that. I mean, hiring people, finding them, recruiting them, hiring them, leading and managing them, it's a ton of work. There's a lot going on, especially when you're doing it for the first time. So you can get really distracted with, org building, and start to subconsciously ignore your product or your service and the product market fit. So I would say for myself, that was it. It's remembering what our core focus is and then continuing to refine that, focus on the customer, focus on our competitive advantages, because that is truly the golden goose. That's why people are buying from you. So keep coming back to it early and often.
Okay, that's a good point actually. Like, I need to think about that one. That's awesome. How about you, Ellery?
Yeah, I think Jordan nailed it. I mean, I'm an engineer by trade, so and I spent actually spending some time as an executive in companies. So I think there's two different ways to split out those. So as you're starting up your company, you're wearing all the hats, and eventually you'll probably boil it down to like this operations role that we've talked about. Depending on your product, Jordan's got kind of a mechanical, if I understand it, mechanical, control system type of a product. Depending on your product, you want to refine it. People use the term pivot, could be pulled into that, but I think it's a continual assessment of whatever your value, whatever your product or your startup value is, and refining is another word that comes to mind. I think you need to continually assess that. I think if there's engineers in the group or technical people, you want to be very careful that you don't overextend yourself changing your product. With for some of my products, I got like injection molding dyes and these types of things. I can't just change my product. It costs 25 grand every time I make a change. So there's a difference between assessing, kind of constantly evaluating, and making those changes, permanent changes. But I think Jordan you got to understand what your customer needs, what your customer wants, what the value of your product is. And I think it's a continuous improvement, if you want to say it that way. You're constantly assessing it, and maybe you're building up a list of changes you want to make in a software package or something. And once you have that budget built, then you can execute that. But you need to be talking to your customer, understanding exactly what the value that you bring to them is.
That's interesting how you two bring similar advice, but from such a different perspective, right? I'm familiar with Jordan's side, focusing on operations, going on the sales, marketing, and everything, and kind of like keeping the product aside. I know the engineering crowd, the stereotypical engineer will improve and try to improve the product infinitely, like as they go. And I was thinking about trying to balance these two, which is like, you still need to improve your cart, but if it is a horse cart and automobile is emerging, maybe you need to switch and change something different, right? So that is an interesting different perspective, different angles on the same question in here. You know what, I will like we're running out of time so fast, and I have hard time looking on time and thinking, oh my god, like we don't have that many minutes left, right? Is there any story or any occasion that you have that something that unexpectedly created more momentum in your startup, right? Or was a source of a big push for you? If you can share it with us, what was it, and how did it feel, I guess, right?
Yeah, I can take that one first. So like I mentioned, I have 3 different products that we patented, and it was an interesting journey. So I came up with the idea. Long story short, I came up with the idea when I was getting my hands dirty. As an engineer, I think I always encourage other engineers to get their hands dirty. Came up with this idea, and I was calling around to talk to people that I knew. So at that time, I had a few years in industry experience, but I was just making phone calls to look for a manufacturer that could help me make this product for me. And out of the blue, we were chatting back and forth. As I shared my idea with this individual, out of the blue, they basically said like, "Hey, are you looking for some cash? Like, I want to make an investment in your company." And I'm like, this is the craziest thing ever. So call it luck. I think there's a bit of that. I think it's also, there's some validation. I think people use the term grinding it out. I made 100 phone calls, and I was trying to raise money, And I think just I guess whatever my passion came through on the phone. This individual knew me a little bit, so had a bit of experience with me, but sometimes you just, you get a break, right? And
Mhm.
maybe you deserve it, maybe you don't, maybe you did something, maybe you didn't, but I think you just, put your best foot forward every day, treat people around you like like to be treated, the golden rule. And you just never know when somebody you're interacting with, or don't be afraid to ask, but you never know when somebody
Mhm.
you're talking to will just, give you the break that you need.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
gonna say movement attracts success, and that's nowhere more true than I've seen it than in entrepreneurship. The term that I've seen is just launch. Just launch. The bulk of the learnings are learned after you jump off the cliff, right? It's just how it has to work. Even like for me, my market research, I was in the industry on my second startup. I learned as much as I could, being in the industry doing the thing that I was launching. And yet I learned so much after I launched because it's just different when it's all on you, when you're 100% responsible. It just is different. I don't know how to explain it other than that. So, we talked about preparing yourself, preparing the foundation. If you're young and you can afford to lose a little bit, like just launch. You're going to learn so much just by doing the thing. And know when to shut it down, know when to pull the plug, it's easier said than done to know when to pull the plug. But it's just if you have that entrepreneurial itch, that you've been given this gift to do this thing, you just have to do it. And you will be so thankful you did. I went personally bankrupt from my first business that I launched, and it was the year from hell for me while I was going through that, but it was also the year from heaven because I learned so much by going through that process. I never went to business school like you guys, but I learned a year at the University of Black and Blue, and it was invaluable lesson, but it wouldn't have happened if I didn't just say, screw it, I'm going to do this thing. So that'd be
Mhm.
my encouragement for you guys. Just freaking launch it, learn a lot, try it, see what happens.
Yeah, that's great. Great message, Jordan. Thank you so much. And you know what? You reminded me. Action creates results for sure. People are saying about luck, right? Being in the right place in the right time. But in order to be there, you need to, wake up, suit up, and show up, right? Otherwise, the luck will not find you. Any last words, or what would be your message, Hillary, for our audience? What would you like to say to them?
Well, I don't know if I have any words of wisdom other than I like to tell a short story. So I mentioned about kind of recharging, and I was taking some holidays last week, and I'm on this hike. So to your point, I got up at 7 a.m. and went on this hike, and it's called Ladder Canyon, and it was an interesting kind of a parallel for me as I'm walking and reflecting and just thinking. I'm walking through these little tunnels and canyons and climbing this ladder, and I'm like, this is crazy. Like, where am I going? Like, I don't know if I'm lost or not. And I'm kind of thinking about this. I'm like, this is pretty much an entrepreneurial journey. Like, I'm getting to the end of this leg, and then I can kind of see the next leg. And if you picture yourself kind of walking through this maze, like a corn maze or something, you can't see the finish line necessarily, right? But you might have a ladder along with you. You can take a look, over top of the corn, or you have a map and you can kind of see where you're going. And I think for me that was encouraging that morning, just talking about myself, reflecting. And I think it's okay. I think we need to get comfortable that you might only see the next few months. You might only know exactly what to do, tomorrow. So get comfortable with that. You don't have to have all the answers, and just keep moving, keep figuring out the next legs of your journey, and take that time to read a book, grab a ladder, and reflect on the future and where you want to go. But that was tough for me. I always like to really know where I'm going and have a plan. But sometimes you only have the next 100 yards of your journey, of your marathon journey, and that's okay. And just
Mhm.
kind of get comfortable with it, and keep keep going.
Yeah, awesome. You know what? Thank you so much. Uh, I personally learned a lot from you too today. lots of good insights, lots of reinforcement of what really matters and what doesn't, right? Which is important to know. I hope our audience, current audience and the future audience, will enjoy the talk today and they will learn as much as I did. And I also hope to see you too in our next webinars and episodes. So yeah, very insightful. I'm so grateful that you found time in your busy schedule to participate in this webinar. So thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure, Ben. Thanks so much for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, I
Thank
echo
you.
that. Thanks so much. I learned a ton as well. I was taking notes here. Maybe you noticed. So always an opportunity to learn from each other. Appreciate the time.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so we will finish